The film begins by showing a woman named Sarah, who has just moved to a city to start a new life. Sarah now decides to live alone as a result of her troubled past. Therefore, she begins by looking for an apartment in the city where she can live. We can see that the surrounding environment there is very pleasant, and the neighbors appear to be friendly as well.
Shante.
An open house is being held at the apartment to welcome new residents, and many people have already came. Inside the apartment, she is greeted by the event manager named Jerry. Jerry invites Sarah to check the condition of the house first in case she is interested. Following that, Sarah notices there is a strange marks on the apartment's wall. After taking a look around, Sarah returns to the conversation with the manager, and she says that she is now looking for a comfortable place to start a new life. Jerry then explains that this is a no pets, no smoking apartment complex, and Sarah confirms that she doesn't have any pets. In the evening, the scene moves to a motel where Sarah is temporarily staying. We can tell that Sarah has actually lied to the manager since she has a pet cat. Shortly after, she receives a phone call and it turns out to be her father who wants to know when she'll be home. She then responds that she will be staying, and can't go home because she is working as a temporary employee. We can see here that her relationship with her father is not very good. The next day, Sarah, who has just started to work in her office, meets her colleague named Lisa. Plus, she also gets a phone call informing her that she has been chosen to be a resident of the apartment she previously visited. Sarah then starts packing her belongings, and immediately moves into her new apartment. Moreover, she also decides to bring her cat there secretly by covering it with a cloth. She suddenly meets a good-looking man named Brian who lives next door to her apartment. Following that, Sarah is introduced to the other residents of the apartment. The old lady named Miss Stanhope takes her to meet a doctor named Esther. Everyone there looks friendly and very pleasant, including Jerry, who also stays there. However, there is also a man with glasses who looks weird and creepy named Lester. He approaches Sarah and offers her to read a book called The Power of Community. He says that the book would be very useful to her, but Sarah refuses because she doesn't think she needs the book, and also because the man appears to be creepy. Later that night, Sarah is having trouble sleeping because the medicine she used to take has run out, and the doctor has to order her medicine first. Sarah then forced herself to sleep, but instead she hears noises coming from nowhere. The noise also disturbs her, who is already having difficulty sleeping at that time. The following day, Sarah begins to continue the process of moving her belongings again. Brian then approaches her and helps her in moving the mattress to the front of her apartment. He offers to bring the mattress into her apartment, but Sarah refuses because she is afraid that her cat will be found. In almost every night, Sarah again gets disturbed by the noises. She doesn't notice anything unusual until one night, when she hears noises coming from within her apartment. As she tries to check it, she finds that her apartment door has not been properly closed. She then tries to sleep despite the strange sounds that keep interrupting her sleep. The following morning, Sarah begins to feel stressed due to lack of sleep. Plus, she suddenly gets a letter delivered under her apartment door. And it turns out that the letter is a warning letter addressed to her, because she has violated the rules by keeping a pet there. As a result, Sarah begins to be suspicious of how anyone could possibly know, and she goes outside to see who sent the letter. Instead, she looks at the people who are usually very friendly to her. It couldn't be them who sent the letter. But at the same corridor, she sees Lester is looking at her suspiciously. When Sarah calls out to him, Lester immediately runs away, and Brian has just come out of his room. Brian then informs her that he is going to have a dinner party tonight, and invites her to join him. He says that the other residents would also be coming, and Sarah says she will come along tonight. Scene then moves to Sarah's office, where she gets a lot of work tasks from her boss. Despite the fact that she didn't get enough sleep, she is forced to do a lot of work, and her boss tells her to clock out first because they can't pay overtime for this task. Her friend, Lisa, feels sorry for her and then tries to cheer her up.
Thanks.
Before going home, Lisa pays a visit to Sarah's apartment, and Sarah has just remembered that she had promised to attend Brian's party. Brian then comes out of his apartment and asks her to join the dinner party. But Sarah apologizes because she forgot that she had another plans, and maybe she will attend later. Inside the apartment, Sarah and Lisa are talking about the relationship between Sarah and her father, which isn't going well at the moment. We find out that her father used to have an affair with his mother. Plus, she's also tired from all of the noise interruptions while she's sleeping, as well as from the letter she got previously. Lisa then encourages Sarah to no longer be concerned with what other people think of her. Later that night, Sarah is startled awake by the sound of a noise, and the smell of smoke in her room. As soon as she checks it, she again finds threatening letter about her pet on the oven. At this point, a terrible moment begins to occur, and it turns out that the smoke smell came from her cat, which has been roasted to death. Sarah can't believe what she has seen, and she is startled again when someone suddenly grabs her from behind. The mysterious man immediately ties her to the chair. At this point, Sarah suspects that this man is Lester, and she begs him not to hurt her. But the man is actually a man who had always been kind and cared to her. Sarah is very surprised by what she sees, and Brian then intends to inject her with an anesthetic. Fortunately, Sarah manages to escape by breaking the cheap IKEA chair. She then screams for help, and bumps into Dr. Esther in the corridor. At first, Sarah is relieved that she might be saved, but it turns out that Esther is also part of the action. Sarah is then taken to a room, where the other residents of the apartment are already there. It turns out that this act is actually intended to be done at the previous dinner party, and Esther thinks it's such a bad way to start this. Without wasting any time, Sarah is then given an anesthetic injection by Brian. After that, she wakes up in a room with a window that has been covered with wood. Sarah realizes that she has been locked up, so she screams for help, but her efforts are in vain. Soon after, she hears footsteps approaching, and it turns out to be Brian and Jerry. Brian's good character has now completely changed, where he tells Sarah to face the wall and put her hands there. Jerry then says that no one would look for her, including her friend, who has been deceived by a fake message from Sarah. At first, Sarah refuses their order, but Jerry then calls Lester and shows what she will get if she does not comply. Jerry says that this is for attacking him, and this is for trying to escape. This of course makes Sarah scared, and she is finally forced to comply with their order. She will need to stay in that position, and can only rest when the red light next to her turns off. Moreover, Sarah stays in that position while being disturbed by a loud song that makes her feel even more stressed. As the time passed, Sarah, who can no longer stand it, finally falls even though the red light is still on. Her action is captured on CCTV, which prompts Jerry and Brian to return to her. Instead of allowing her to rest, the two men punishes her for her actions by nailing her hands to the wall. At this moment, Sarah discovers the truth from the patches she noticed at the beginning of the film. Brian says that he is now helping Sarah, and she must remain in her position. Sarah has now been standing for such a long time, where she's getting tired and begins hallucinating. Her father appears in her hallucination, and tells her to pull her hands off the nail. Sarah thinks that her father has really come to save her, and eventually falls unconscious as she realizes that it's just a hallucination. Brian and Jerry then re-enter the room, and Sarah is assumed to have passed the trial. After that, Sarah is taken out to be treated for her wounds. After all of that incident, she is treated well by the residents. Other residents also shows their hands, which turns out to also have scars like Sarah's. After that, Jerry and Brian begin their interview with Sarah, which includes the use of a lie detector. At this point, she is asked about her sexual preference and about her first sexual experience. Jerry emphasized that openness is one of the foundation of their community, and that secrecy will only lead to disputes. Sarah is then given a book titled The Power of Community, which is the same as the book that Lester had offered her the previous day. She begins to learn more about this community, and begins to understand what is the community's purpose. Their purpose is to create a community that is different from others, with a greater emphasis on social harmony. After that, she is interviewed again, and Jerry asks her to name the 4 foundations from the community. Sarah confidently answers that the 4 foundations are selflessness, openness, acceptance, and security. They finally ask if Sarah wants to be a part of this community, and she says yes. But the lie detector indicates that she is lying. She is then given another opportunity to learn more about the community. Therefore, she is taken to a classroom where the children are learning about the community through a videotape. On the recorded tape, they can see a man named Charles Ellerby is being interviewed. He is the one who created and built the community with his clever idea plus crazy method. Sarah slowly begins to understand the 4 foundations, starting from selflessness, openness, acceptance,
once an error has been corrected, it's already forgiven.
and security. For security, Charles Ellerby mentioned that their best selves when they know their neighbor is watching. By practicing these 4 foundations, their community can live free of loneliness, poverty, and strife. Jerry now believes that Sarah is ready to take on more responsibilities in the community. Therefore, she is taken to a room that turns out to be a monitoring room for all of the residents' activities of the apartment there. This completely explains why they seem to know Sarah's every move before this, while also applying their 4th foundation. While they're keeping an eye on all of the residents, it turns out that there's also a CCTV behind them. Sarah tries to ask who is watching them, but Brian tells that it is none of their business, and tells her to return to monitor the screen. In the monitor screen, she sees Miss Stanhope is having shortness of breath and falls over. Sarah immediately gives a signal to Brian to help the old lady. As a result, she receives praise from Jerry for her efficiency in carrying out her responsibilities. At this moment, all the residents of the apartment came to visit Miss Stanhope. Brian then begins to tell about all of the contributions that the grandmother has made to this community during her time as a resident. At first, everything seems normal, until he finally says something that sounds like farewell words. Sarah starts to panic when she sees the gas tube is prepared. Brian then tells her that Miss Stanhope has been considered that she can no longer contribute anything to the community. But strangely, Miss Stanhope just accepts it and acts as if she has known this would happen. Sarah is forced to hold her emotions while seeing the grandmother's head is covered with black plastic, and poison gases delivered right into the plastic. After the old lady passed away, Brian recounts his experience in the early days of joining the community. Brian assures Sarah that this community helped him a lot. After that horrific incident, Sarah finally accepts to be a part of that community. She is then led into the courtyard, and it turns out that the other residents are already there to celebrate her into their community. She doesn't expect that she would be marked behind her ear using a hot iron. After that, Brian points out that everyone there has the same sign. During their celebration, Sarah is surprised again when she finds out that she has been betrothed to Lester the creepy man. This is because Lester is a lonely man who has been abandoned by his wife for a long time after she died of cancer. As a result, Sarah has no other choice but to compliment one another in that community. The two of them are eventually get married, and she is forced to kiss the man. Just like a new married couple, Lester takes Sarah to his apartment right away. Following that, she is told that her old apartment is no longer hers, and it is for a new candidate. Lester immediately takes her to the bed, which of course causes Sarah to feel hesitant. Fortunately, Jerry suddenly came and says that they are in trouble. It turns out that the problem is that they see Sarah's father on CCTV came to meet her. Jerry then tells her that she has to make sure her father won't come again or he would be killed. After that, they renovate an unoccupied apartment to look like Sarah's house. Sarah finally has the opportunity to see her father after a long time. But she is forced to curse her father with harsh words that are very painful for her father to hear, out of fear that her father will be killed. As a result of her words, her father is upset, and he promises that he will not visit her again. After that incident, Sarah is brought back to bed by Lester. But it turns out that Lester wants to show her the sewing machine her mother had previously given her. He then shares that he had thought about escape out of the place or committing suicide, in order to get out of the situation. However, they are forced to accept that this is their life now. As the day passed, Sarah becomes more accustomed with the community. Until one day, the cult is looking for new residents again to fill the unoccupied apartment. At this point, Sarah is shocked and worried as she sees Lisa has also came to try to apply for the vacant apartment. Long story short, Lisa is very excited that she has been chosen to stay there. At this point, they begin their action again. Sarah finally knows that the disturbance she experienced every night is just a fake noise, to make her stressed and uncomfortable. Moreover, they make every effort to separate Lisa from her previous empty and selfishness life. However, Sarah reminds that Lisa is a strong person who will definitely fight back. And Sarah's word is right, just as they are about to grab Lisa, she fights back by biting Brian's ear. Therefore, Sarah is then sent in to calm her friend down, but she fails to do so.
Wait, no, Lisa, wait!
Since Lisa continues to fight, She will be punished by having her ear hole stabbed with a screwdriver. At this very moment, Sarah is ordered by Jerry to hold the screwdriver. When Jerry is about to hit it, Sarah can no longer hold her feelings and stabs Jerry in the neck with a screwdriver. Following that, Sarah and Lisa then rush out of the room. But unfortunately, Jerry, who is still alive, manages to shoot Lisa to death. Sarah can't accept that her friend is killed, so she immediately attacks Jerry and stabs him many times until he died. At this moment, she feels confused as she notices Jerry, the manager, also has the same mark on his hands and behind his ear. She then walks out while holding a gun, while an alarm starts to sound indicating that something bad is happening. All of the residents comes out and surrounds her, including Brian. Brian tries to persuade Sarah with his lies, and she shoots him right away. Sarah then runs towards the entrance door, but just as she almost manages to get out, she is caught and the gun is seized by Lester. Surprisingly, Lester shoots the man who is holding Sarah, and tells her to run away immediately. Meanwhile, Lester restrains the residents who are attempting to chase Sarah before taking his own life with a gunshot. As she runs down the street covered in blood, she is taken aback as she comes across a board with a logo that appears to be similar to the one used by the community. Plus, the strange things keep happening when the same alarm is sounding from every building in sight. This is when Sarah realizes that the community isn't just isolated to her apartment, but all of the blocks seems to be under the influence of Charles D. Ellerby's sick ideas of an ideal community. Moreover, there are CCTV cameras indicating that someone is keeping an eye on them. In the end, she gives out a frantic laugh, and clenches her fist as she realizes that she isn't the same person anymore, and she continues to run out of there. And with that, the film ends.